Hello there. Welcome back and welcome to part 55, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's part 55. Anyway, welcome back to another episode in my Build-A-Log series of the Trumpeter 1:200 scale model of the Titanic. Now, today I am working on the forward grand staircase, so right about here. Obviously this is about the most famous part of the entire ship. I think most people, if you hear Titanic, immediately you think sort of, first class, luxury, grand staircase. So that's what I'm building today. And what I'm using is a set of 3D prints from a Facebook-based company called Amateur 3D Printing. Links in the description below. Check them out if you're interested. So this is a set, and it's the same type of set that I used for the aft grand staircase as well. This comes in 3 parts. You get 3D prints, and they come in sort of single tier sections. So you get boat deck to A deck as one piece, A deck to B deck as another piece, so on and so on. There are also a set of clear printouts, and they are printed to look like the iron balustrades that were on the staircase. And there's also some paper printouts which are meant to look like the wooden panelling on the staircase. So on the boat deck there's there's the clock, and on A deck there's a portrait, and so on as it goes down. So over the course of the video I will be painting, assembling these staircases. I'll be making the relevant cuts in the actual deck structure to fit this thing in place, and I'll be showing you how I've done absolutely all of that. So that's all coming up in today's video. Without any further ado, let's crack on.
Now I'm just going to show you how I go about extracting 3D printed parts when they've got quite a lot of support material on them, because it can be a bit tricky sometimes. But what I tend to do is use a hot blade. So I've got a tea light here, and just heat up the blade over that flame, and then the cutting of the support structure becomes a lot easier. Now this, I have to say, is not my method. This is a method that I first saw on the Midwest Model Shop's channel, so thank you very much to them, because this is an absolute lifesaver. These parts tend to be quite expensive, and if you can't extract them from the support material without damaging them, it's just a bit of a shame, really. Let's see, where do we need to go? So, I'm sure by now you're getting the idea. So what I'll do is I'll pop this on time lapse, and we'll get the rest of this part out. So as you can see, there are 3 parts to the grand staircase that I am going to fit. There's this, which is the sort of balustrade around the very top that sits on the actual boat deck. That will go around here, possibly a bit further forward, a bit further aft rather, about there. Then you have this bit. This is the staircase that goes from the boat deck down to A deck, so this will sit underneath this. They'll essentially marry up like that. And then we have this piece which goes down from A deck down into B deck. And that's as far as I'm going to go. Of course, I could go further. The grand staircase did go further than that, but I'm not going to, because I just don't see the point. You're not going to see it, and it's not going to add any value to the model. So,
as with before, the cutouts that are pre-done in the plastic for this kit are not in the right place for the grand staircase. Fortunately, we are given this as part of the set. This is it is literally just a piece of cardboard, but it's cut out to give you the right size aperture that you need to cut for your grand staircase. So, what we need to do is we need to align this so that the very back part of the staircase lines up with this, what will be a wall here. And then we need to centralise it, make sure it's in the middle. And beyond that, that's very simple. Then what I'll do is I'll draw around it and then I'll cut out. So, let's crack on with that. So, let's get a trusty ruler. And the width of this is 29. So we want 54.5 millimeters either side. So that looks pretty spot on there. To the side. Yep. Okay. There we are. I know it's not particularly obvious on the camera. But the nice thing about pencil is it has this sort of sheen to it, so when the light shines the right way, you actually can see it quite clearly. Okay, there we are, and I'll do one final measurement. It's 54.5. That is 54.5. Excellent. So I've now got my aperture, just need to cut it out. One final point to note, of course, sensible to check that there's nothing that you're going to damage underneath when you cut these things out. Fortunately, I was able to think far enough ahead that I didn't put any lights in and around here, so that should be fine. Right, so here we are, everything's chopped out, and I appreciate it does look quite rough at the moment, but bear in mind, once we've got the sort of balustrade on, and of course the tiled flooring on top of that, you tend to cover all manner of sins with these sort of things, and also, bear in mind, you're going to see this through some windows here anyway, so, you know, the dome's going to be opaque, so visibility is pretty minimal, really. One thing I might do is I might take away this grey plastic from underneath, because it does make the floor look about 20 feet thick, which clearly isn't realistic. So I might do that. But the next job, of course, is to put the tiling down. So what I did in that last clip was to add both the tiling for the grand staircase and also the tiling for the gymnasium that I'll be doing in a future video. Right, so down now onto the A deck grand staircase. Here it is. And I thought I'd do this one live rather than in time-lapse because I did the boat deck in time-lapse. So what I'm doing is I'm using a really good quality pair of scissors. Now these look a bit large, but they're large because they're actually, I think they're wallpaper cutting scissors, but they have that sort of, every part of the blade cuts properly, and I find with smaller scissors like Swiss Army knife scissors or really tiddly ones, that's not always the case. So I find these quite good. So I'm not going to be too over the top. We all know how to use scissors, but just, as always, take your time. It should come out pretty well. Now, because this is going to be stuck down onto something which has a wood-coloured back, my preference is to cut these a bit closer than they should actually be, because what will ruin the look is having a little white border around the outside. That will look a bit silly. Whereas if I cut them a bit short, all that's going to happen is you're going to see more of the wood in the background, and that's not really a bad thing. So my preference on these ones is to cut them just a little bit more than I otherwise would, a little bit closer. Right, and then this last little bit, it's just a little bit tricky to access via scissors. What I'll do is I will use my scalpel blade for it, because we know that that's accurate. This is the way. So there we go. Right, as always, we'll just do a little test fit, make sure everything's good. And yes, it seems to be. So what we'll do is we'll get our glue spreader. And we'll get this stuck down. And as with everything internal to the ship, my preference here is to use a bit more glue than I otherwise would normally, because I don't want to have to come back to this in years to come, you know? I want this to stay stuck down forever. So that's in place now, and I'm just going to apply some pressure with the flat part of my scalpel blade. I'm not using the sharp part, I'm just using the flat bit, and make sure that that's pressed down properly. There we are. Leave that to dry, but just to sort of show you what it looks like. There you have both sets, and you can see how they interlink. Boat deck down onto A deck, and then background down onto B deck. Simple. So what I'm doing here is I'm just painting some bronze nymphs that adorned the banisters on the staircase. Right, so I'm going to do one of these to camera, just so you can sort of see the process. And we'll do this rail from A deck. So let's start by cutting it out. And what I'm going to do is I'll get some blue tack. And I will stick my A deck piece down with that so it doesn't move throughout. Let's zoom in now. So, get a bit of glue. Put the glue on either side. Then with another bit of blue tack. Just going to lift up this balustrade. And pop it in place. And there you go. Now, it's dastardly tricky to get the camera to focus on these things well enough. So what I've done is I've taken a couple of still images, and hopefully these sort of show what the film can't. So it gives you a good idea of what the balustrades look like when they're in place. Bear in mind, of course, that these are very, very, very small parts. Right, so here we are, and we've got the grand staircases now fully sort of made up. So the plan is to fit in boat deck 1 and then to fit in the A deck 1 underneath it, and as one might expect they fit together very nicely and you end up with a really nice sort of 3D image of what the grand staircase would have looked like if you could sort of take the rest of Titanic away from it, a bit like a Ken Marshall drawing really. So these are going to be stuck together, and the idea is that when you lift out the boat deck piece, the entirety of the forward grand staircase comes out with it. So I'm going to build downwards. I'm going to start with this piece. That's the top grand staircase. Then I will do the sort of surrounding balustrades, these bits. And then I will do the A deck part. Right, so I'm just going to glue in the grand staircase now, or at least the A deck portion of it. Sorry, the boat deck portion of it. And at the minute it's just sitting in there as a friction fit, which is satisfying in the sense that I was able to cut the hole accurately enough that it can sit as a friction fit, but also it just helps align stuff a bit better, So I'm just going to go along, add a bit of glue. What I'll do is I'll do the top side with a reasonably small amount of glue. And then I'll do the underside with a fairly liberal amount of glue. So give that a couple of seconds to dry. And then we'll flip over and we'll do to the other side. Just get me kicker. pretty rapidly. Now then, because on the B deck section, this is B deck, no sorry it's not, this is A deck here, but it'll be going down to B deck, I've decided to do what's called a clearance fit. So as you can see, the staircase sits very comfortably in that hole, masses of room either side. And you might think, well that doesn't look very good, but the reason I've decided to do this is because you're only going to see this staircase through the promenade windows and then through the windows of the actual deck housing on A deck. So you've got two lots of windows to look through before you even get to see the staircase. So all you're going to see, if you see anything at all, is some reasonably sort of wooden coloured blurs. So I'm not that concerned about there being a big hole either side. And the reason it's useful to do it this way is because it makes installing this way easier. I can just glue it onto the boat deck piece, and then when I put the deck down, this just plops into the hole nice and simple. And it still gives you the illusion that something's there, but it simplifies the assembly massively. And so there you go, you can see the rationale there. That is the A deck to B deck section in place. And so there we go, that is enough for one episode, I think. I like this shot because you can see the clock with the two nymphs either side, which in some way apparently symbolised honour and glory, which crowned time. That was the rationale apparently. So another good bit of work done, and probably one of the last really fiddly bits of modelling that needs doing. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, pop them down below, and I'll do my absolute best to get back to you. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Next video will be on the gymnasium, and also I'll be adding some additional stuff to the grand staircase. So my plan is to add the band playing on the boat deck section of the grand staircase. Now I know this isn't probably very factually accurate. I know that my model sort of set is sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I know there's not really an excuse for the band being around at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, particularly on the boat deck of the grand staircase, but it's one of those things, it's such an iconic part of Titanic that I really want to show it, and I want to show it somewhere where it's going to be reasonably visible. So that's the plan for the next episode. I'll be doing the band, along with all the walls and stuff which are yet to be done on the grand staircase, and I'll probably also squeeze the gymnasium into that one as well. So, lots of stuff to crack on with, but for now, thanks for watching, and bye for now.